Hello, beautiful souls, gorgeous humans. We are here today with beautiful Rachel Ross Smith and Oshun. Hi, Oshun. Oh my gosh, she's the cutest. We're here to have a conversation about our being, our soul, our higher selves, our human. And I want to just start by saying all of this whole live chat that we're having with you all is about. I was writing this journal, and in this journal I talk about the higher self, I refer to our human, I refer to our soul, I refer to our being. And at some point I was like, wow, this is like really confusing. And I got confused myself, so I reached out to Rachel. I just had this feeling she would help, like, support me and guide me through this. And it's so divine, however you want to call it. The moment I had the thought to message her, I sent her a voice note. She's like, isn't it funny? I was literally spending the morning writing about this. And so we had this back and forth conversation, and it's like a light bulb went up. And I created some changes within the content of this journal. And then I said, you know what? This deserves like a conversation just to give it some definition and context so that it elevates the conscious clarity and allows us to navigate. Does that make sense the way I'm saying it? I feel like it does.
100%. And I loved it's just that beautiful alignment uh experience, isn't it? Because I was in Portugal, I was journaling, and I literally was writing like half an hour before you messaged and reached out. So huge congratulations on this journal as well, Atena. I mean, it's gorgeous. That's the first time I've seen the cover. Obviously, we've spoken about it, but that's the first time I've seen the cover. And it looks stunning. So you'll have to share
Thank
with us
you.
all where we can pick that up as well and purchase it and
Definitely.
enjoy it. But before we finish up here.
Definitely. Well, my subconscious identity shifted as I gave birth to this, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is the first time I create something that I really feel not just genuinely proud of, but it's a very direct representation of my being expressing my soul. Here, let's get into it. How about that? Right. So one of the biggest questions that instigated all of this is, what is the difference between our soul and our being, right? And Rachel gave such a beautiful answer. And if anyone is into human design, by the way, because we made a joke about this, I said, Rachel, you're going to lead this conversation because you're the projector and I'm the manifesting generator. So I'm going to bounce off of you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I love this conversation, and I feel like the more I've gone into my journey of becoming conscious, of remembering my truth and the truth of, what it is we're here to experience and be, and the sort of how of that. The definition that I would give to being has evolved with that. And I feel like that is our ever expanding journey. I feel like with what we're talking about here, the understanding of the being, the soul, or higher self, it's a forever evolving and expanding journey as we ultimately awaken and remember, like we said at the beginning of the call. And I think remember is like such an important word for this conversation. And that's something that I've come to understand through my journey, through my spiritual development, through my personal development, my self-development. It is really a case of remembering, because everything's within us. It's all within us. And so how I really define the elements of the being and the soul is looking at the being as that life force energy that runs through us all. It's that innate power that connects us all. And ultimately, we are all part of that whole. And we'll go into that more, but just as a brief overview, then how I differentiate with the soul is like that fragment of that whole piece, that fragment that is our unique fragment. And this part, of that follows us through many, many different lives and experiences and dimensions for our growth and that coming back to the whole. So in simplistic terms, that's how I define both and how I see them as, yes, part of the same whole, but slightly different elements of that whole.
Yes, and for anyone listening, the remembrance, I want you to pay attention to this part specifically, as she said, because it genuinely feels like when a lot of times spiritual times we're cracking codes. You crack a code and you remember, it's like a truth that once you recognize it, it's like how it feels like, how did I not know this? I've always known this, and how did I forget? And I think that's the part, like when your soul chooses the family you're going to be born in. I believe we choose the situations we come into and the circumstances. And so I know now with certainty that my soul chose to be born in that state of war, chose to be born in a disappointing environment, because part of my soul mission is to show that no matter what, we can come back to the unconditional love. Unconditional love is our truth, and that's part of my unique, you would say, soul mission. And when I began to remember these things, it felt very much like it's always been there since my birth. But because of all the conditioning of the human that goes through, and I want us to get into the human, because even the editor was like, what do you keep saying the human? What does this mean? And so that's really being born and knowing that your soul is, I know I have a very old soul, your soul is wise. However, the human, the brain, is very much also that blank slate that receives the informations like a computer and like gets stored away, and sometimes can inhibit you from manifesting your unique individualism, right? And so the process of waking up, as they would say, and remembering your soul's truth and the power of your being to feel like it's a describable thing, it's very much a feeling. You start to release that conditioning of the human, and you realign your human with your soul mission.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I wanted to add there as well, I love that you shared about your soul journey there. For me, I really feel my soul journey here is about remembering my power and really stepping into my power. So a lot of the experiences I've witnessed, throughout my life from a very young age has been around my power being taken away, or for a short period while I remembered and went through that transition. And another element of that on what we're talking about, you've spoken about where you were born into a war-torn country. In past podcasts with you, I've spoken more about my difficulties, but ultimately, the key element here, and something that I think we're all becoming more aware of, because of the information out there, is actually the power of the places that offer us pain and heartache and challenges. When we're willing to go into them from a soul perspective, when we're willing to go into them, that is where the hidden gems, that is where the treasure lies for our soul growth and development. It's really the beautiful thing about going into the thing that feels awkward. I spoke about this at the end of last year when we talked after the time in Costa Rica with ayahuasca, and at the retreat it was really spoken about and you were encouraged. But that's the key element. Being willing to go in and see those learnings within those challenges offers our soul the golden nuggets and gems that it's really here to find and to seek.
I think that she could not have said it better. And a lot of times we are scared to look at those elements. I feel that, I know for myself anyways, I was very much scared to look inwards and recognize sometimes the pain that was around me and the pain that I had like embodied, and to really genuinely take a deep look inside the shadow self and to incorporate that, because there is a lot of wisdom through this. There's a lot of magic that can come out of it, and I find psychedelics are really good for this. And I haven't spoken too much about it. I think I only spoke about it very privately in my own psychedelic journey. It's definitely something I want to come to at some point, because it kind of also opens up, and it's like it's not as scary as we tend to think it is, because I don't know how to explain why it's not that scary. I don't know if you have better way of going about it.
Yeah, so do you mean like the transition, so the opening up of that the crack?
Yeah, like
Yeah,
cracking open and looking very much deep within,
yeah,
and facing your biggest fears and your biggest shadows, I would say.
yeah. It's funny it is, I mean, the experience we have here, it's so interesting because our soul is this, deep element of the being energy, the source energy, and then we have our mind that is still functioning when we first came into existence as humans back in cavemen. So it's like it's doing everything from a primal sense to keep us safe, which is why it can seem so scary to go into the things that feel uncomfortable, because ultimately our mind is telling us this is danger, it feels awkward, don't go here. But the contrast is that actually going into the pain, going into the trauma, it's a portal. And that's the word I really feel fit for
Oh,
it. And the more I've come to understand, it
yeah.
really is. It's a portal into, and I've got goosebumps saying that, but it's a portal into the higher expression of ourself that's here for us. And I'm so thrilled that we're starting to remember this, because again, this knowledge, this wisdom's always been here. It's just we've kind of forgotten it along the last few thousand years. But we're remembering, even before we started recording, Atena, we were talking about Iran, and I said it's awful what's going on, and you said it is, but it's also liberating. It's taken for the people and for you to go into that pain and the horrendous things that are happening right now to be liberated. And now we are
1000%.
seeing a new world be born through that, and a new experience, a new paradigm be born through that, which you'll obviously be able to talk more deeply on. But it's happening all over the place, and it's within all of us, and we all have that opportunity to be liberated and to go through the portals that seem dark and destructive and painful in order to be a fuller expression of ourselves. And I think we're being so called to that right now.
As soon as you said portal, I was like, I'm so using this moving forward.
Mm,
And I feel like you definitely hit a point in terms of expression of our most authentic selves. I noticed when it comes to Iran, for instance, there are many things that I very much avoided speaking about, because there is an element of actual danger or a choice that I need to make to never go back, or with Iran, the paranoia of the Iranian foreigner, like living abroad, is even if I have family there, what if I say something horrendous and then the government goes after your family? It's just this very much oppressive element. Women being considered one third of a man. Like, this is very much the mindset that I was like introduced to upon birth, and I'm still dealing with that in many ways. But when we began to have that global conversation, I felt like a healing that I didn't even know I needed, to be honest. And I was telling Rachel, I had a moment where the song was sang by an artist, and I just began to sob, because I said I never recognized just how much my human needed this to feel like liberated, to be able to express my whole authentic self, and to feel also proud of many things. And there was even a moment, and I'll share this like briefly, because it is very much, our nervous system can very much feel triggered. I did faint the other day from all the emotions. I was sitting there because I made a choice at some point that I'm going to speak out, and I'm not going to go back until the regime changes. And that was a choice I made like that, but it's a very big choice. And so my nervous system definitely got triggered, and my husband came, and I like went to give him a hug, and like all of a sudden I fainted, and I was like convulsing, and he's like, this is the scariest thing I've seen. But after that, I felt like I need to let this out. And it's not the first time that my body, my nervous system reacts to things like this, but it's liberating after a while. It's liberating to face your pain. It's liberating to face the things that you have suppressed for so long. And one thing I said to him, because he's like, well, why don't you just take it easy? Why don't you just not do, because I mean, of course he was a little concerned, understandably so, but I said, I don't want to. Why go through my entire life with this suppression? Like, I want to live. I want to express. I feel all the ranges, all of it. And sometimes that means it's going to take some time. I'm going to need to nurture my human, which I would love for us to talk about, because this human is very fragile in some ways, very strong and wise, but also very fragile. I've come to notice, because the moment there's a deep psychological element that's been suppressed that gets triggered to awakening, my body has reacted to it. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, so do you want to just touch on the sort of Ocean's got a lot to say. I'm telling you, she has a lot to say in this world. I see it already. Um, I think just really, I think it's so important to honor the work and the energy that it takes to move through portals, to open up, to remember. I mean, it's significant, especially when you're dealing with elements of your experience that have maybe impacted on you throughout your, your whole life, which is relevant to what we're talking about here. So, it's so important to, focus in on the self-care, and the being open. I think that's one thing actually that's really important to say here is we actually spoke about this before we started recording as well. It's the being open, and being okay with it being messy and emotional and raw and vulnerable, because again, we have to go through that to get to the next step. So yeah, I think just honoring the significance of the shifts and the changes, and allowing yourself time and downtime and relaxed time, and time to be open with those around you, and speak honestly and be heard and be listened to.
I remember actually when in our last conversation after your experience in ayahuasca, you also went through that journey of even physically going through the shifts. And I think sometimes we resist that because it feels scary. But there's something that I've come to know is that our body is actually very wise. Our emotions tend to trip us up until we give our body the space to go through that recovery and go through that healing. And I think that it's important, because if we don't allow these emotions to come out and our body to detox from the energies that are held, it will continue to manifest in our lives. And one of the things that I began to do this year is liver cleanses, because I didn't understand why I would get these triggers of anger, emotions going up and down. And my shaman actually said, because of the way also I was born in a state of extreme stress, violence, and aggression, that went from my mom's nervous system directly into my liver. And she's like, it's very important for you to cleanse it. It doesn't matter how good you eat. You can have all the best fruits, all the best things, but your body literally needs to detox this energy that you were essentially born with. So just wanted to touch on those physical elements. Okay, so let's talk about also the higher self in this, because I talk a lot about the higher self in the journal as well. I speak of the higher self as that wise part of you, I guess, that kind of like that voice that just kind of helps you illuminate on the positive and question the parts, the lower vibrational tendencies without judgment. And so now it's like we're getting into our being, our soul, our human, and now our higher self. So I would love to hear your take on the higher self.
Yeah, so I think there's sort of two elements. I feel like there's a bit of a I see it like there's two elements to this. I see it as we talked previously, just at the start of this conversation, about the being, the true essence of being. There's different ways being can be used, and we'll go into that throughout the conversation, I'm sure. But the true essence of being is that source energy. And the other thing I just quickly want to touch on here, and it does tie into the higher self, so just bear with me, it's the knowing and understanding. And this, again, I feel has been such a huge part of my journey. And I actually see this as quite a significant part of the soul journey. Depending where you are, I think there's elements of different lives and different experiences that lead up to this. I believe the most freeing part of the human experience, or part of the most freeing part of the human experience that we can have while we're here, is that understanding of our being, ourself, is as full and whole and perfect right here, right now, before we've hit all the goals and done all the things. And actually, if you want to strip it back, a really great question to ask yourself is, if everything was stripped away from me today, who would I be? Where would I be? If everything was taken from me, the identity that I've created, the relationships, everything, the home, the luxury goods, the car, if everything was taken away from me, where would I be? And that for me is such a freeing element. And I feel like I'm quite well on my journey to that, after having moments in time in this life where things really have been stripped back, to be able to stand and say, I am whole, I am worthy, I am love, I am source, I am the essence in my being, I am the essence of source, is such a freeing concept. So,
and I want to accentuate something you said, because it's perfect. The word perfect. We are so used to saying I'm perfectly imperfect, and I want us to just recognize that our essence, our being, is indeed perfect.
Oh yeah.
And when you said it, I think it's just because I want, if someone didn't hear it, I want to just very much accentuate it, and to know that you are already perfect exactly as you are. And it's like the human in you continues to grow. So I really wanted to highlight that before.
Yeah, thank you, because it's so important. And I think we can get so caught up, in the vision, and as you know, I'm big on speaking about the vision, but we can. And so it's important to remember that you are perfect right here, right now. And so where I see the higher self tying into this, it's that highest potential that exists and is available here for us. And that is forever expanding. The universe is forever expanding. That is forever expanding. It is infinite. There is no end to that. And so in our human experience while we're here, we can really connect into that. It is much the same thing, but I see it as different fragments, like I was saying about the soul, of that same thing, of that bigger thing. And we talk about the beingness of an identity as well, and we can use our higher self to create that. We can tap to that highest potential through our vision, through silencing ourselves, through really connecting to that source energy, that center point within us, and be an open channel for the guidance, the information that's going to come through and to us. And I believe when we can connect to that and we continue to evolve into that, it's really how we're able to experience as much as possible while we're here. But I want to emphasize again, you are perfect right now. And we do have an opportunity, and see it as an opportunity, to forever expand. We are infinite, to forever expand in this lifetime, to evolve and grow and become more of what we are. But my ask, and I'm saying this more and more, is to do it from that place of that you are whole and perfect now, rather than lacking something. I think I've definitely been there anyway, doing it from a place of lacking, and that was part of my journey. But actually it's far more abundant and simple, and I guess a sense of ease, because it's ridding that desperate sort of need for being more, where you're doing it from a place of fullness and wholeness, but with that understanding that you are part of that source energy, and as part of that you're forever expanding. So that's I hope that's helpful.
Super helpful, and I want to very much accentuate one part that you said, that if again, it's like I pick up on what you're saying, I'm like, I want you all to hear this. In the silence, you have got to unplug from the matrix. You have got to unplug from the world at times and just go into nature, be silent, and really give yourself the opportunity to listen, to really observe. One of the things I get you to do, for example, in this journal, is to write all the stories that are going on in your mind, understanding that the psychological past that you are carrying with you and how that impacts you. And then, yes, you have a vision for the future, but you're right here, right now. We only live in the present moment. And so when you tap into that silence that Rachel was talking about, it's like, and you start to feel a joy simply for being. And this helps you after, when you get triggered by situations, or there's moments where you don't feel good enough, you don't feel complete, you begin to question that. Then that's really, I feel like, the voice also of the higher self connecting you with your being, because she says, or he says, however you want to go about it, well, why aren't you good enough? Of course you are. Of course you are. What is the story that's been planted in your mind that perhaps needs to shift? And I find that that's the human part. But then, if the more you tap into that silence and you make it a part of your regular day, like I literally start every morning with silence. I take it throughout the day, and I think a lot of us, technology is a beautiful thing. This is how Rachel and I are able to have this conversation. This is how you're tuning into this conversation. But maybe some of you already know this. I took a social media break for 5 weeks, and I remembered that I'm worthy simply for being. All of that was not from being plugged in, not listening to things. It was like just listening to myself, being silent next to the ocean, and getting pissed off at the ocean. I really did. I was like, it's so loud. I was like, why am I so upset? And the more I practiced staying in the silence, the more I observed. I literally spent a couple of days just not talking. You begin to observe also the craziness of the mind. The mind can be so crazy. It can just want to hang on to every single little thing to hold on to control. But then the moment you continuously practice silence and you feel your being, it's so liberating. It's so liberating, because you're like, yeah, I'm perfect. I'm perfect. I'm God's perfect creation. I'm Source's perfect creation. And I'm an energy in constant transmutation. And as I manifest my soul mission, as I grow and I evolve and I learn to self-express, I liberate those around me. And one of the phrases that my psychedelic facilitator very much reminded me, and it just resonated all over in my being, is, in the end, we're all walking each other home. Like, this journey of our life is, very, very radical vision perhaps for some people, is perhaps we come here to experience our heaven on earth. I believe that when we go back to source energy, it's a very different form of being. We don't have our senses, we don't experience pain, and it's like, this individualism process is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. This earth is so beautiful. It's so abundant. Anytime I need to reach abundance, I just step into nature. But the mind sometimes needs to catch up. The mind's got a little agenda of its own. I think I went off a little too far there, but
Oh, I was loving listening to it, and I'm right there with you. And this, we've spoke a bit about this, like that has been a huge part of my work recently, is the journey of the present moment, and really embracing that, and embodying that. And I felt like light and blissful when you were talking there, because I could really connect with it. It's that slowing down to the speed of nature, right? And it's beautiful. Like, it's all of us. Like, it's in there. And yeah, the modern world has us speeding and busy and all the things. But again, I feel and I see more and more people on that journey of slowing back down, returning to the present moment, and remembering, remembering that feeling to me, that what you're talking about, that feeling of being in nature and that connectedness and that wholeness, and that is the essence of the being, right? Like you were saying, that is it, and it's there for all of us, and it's a very beautiful thing. And I love what you were talking about, the mind, because yeah, our mind's crazy, like psychos.
Right? It's just so funny. Like anyone listening to this, if you want to understand how crazy your mind is, spend one day in silence and just like don't do things, please. I got, like, for example, one of the first clients I suggested, she's like, I had the most productive day. I'm like, oh my gosh, don't do anything, just sit in nature and just listen to your thoughts and notice this rambling of going on and on and on. And something that I love about what both of us are saying is how nature and the slowing down allows us to remember, cities are beautiful. They're meant to serve us. Like when you think about it, every invention made by man, which has always existed, nothing fell from the sky. It's like, we got airplanes, we got trains, we got grocery stores, we got all of this to make our lives easier, right? That's the point of a city. And so at some point, however, I feel like we got so intertwined with all the things. And I think one of the something one of my best friends when in high school made me really see at a very young age. She got a car. And she said, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to have so much more time once I get this car. This is great. And then, like a couple of weeks after she got the car, we were hotboxing her car. We were smoking weed, and I was like, "So, how's it been?" And she's like, I thought I'd have more time, but I just had more appointments. And that was my first like moment of, huh, that's odd. And then I realized that this cycle just happens. Like, so we have all this ease only to get more lost in it, only to be more plugged in, and only to lose ourselves in all of this. And it's like when we slow down and we scale back and we just let ourselves be integrate with the wholeness of nature and do things that, like walking on grass with your feet, there's an ease that comes in. It's just wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And so much to be connected with there as well. Like honestly, when I spend time in silence or in nature, and I'm doing it more and more as well, Ten, I think I maybe said this to you, like I'm actively taking a day a week where I just have quietness. I feel more and more pulled to it. There's so much learning there. There's so much learning and expression and insight, like the really profound insights, come through on those days, that really help with my growth and my development. And it is simply about lessening distractions and like you're saying, tuning in. And when you can kind of get past that barrier of the mental chit chat chatter, which again, it's a practice, like to move through that is a practice. But when you can move through that, there again, like we were saying earlier in the conversation, those golden nuggets and gems that are awaiting there are beautiful. But many people will go their whole lives not feeling aware enough to, or not being aware enough to silence the distractions and go within. But there's such magic to be had there, which is incredibly wonderful. And the other element I think to touch on as well about the being is how we can use that in terms of manifestation. Again, it all really comes back to the same thing, but slightly different. I see that what we've talked about already, that core element of being is in source energy, and that center point within us all is really the delicious part, in my opinion. But we also have the ability to connect with the being of different identities in order to live different experiences and try out different outfits or
Yes.
whatever, do you know? And so we can connect with that, like the being of a public speaker or the being of a mother or the being of a world leader, or do you know? And so we can use those identities and the connectedness to our being through that, which is, I know when we were voice noting my sort of definition, it's more ego led, if you like. However, we're here to experience. And so there's absolutely all of that to play with as well. And through that, using universal law, using manifestation in order to bring into existence that experience within the beingness of an identity. I hope that was all. I hope I said that clear enough, but just I
Very
felt it was
clear.
important to
No,
touch on that as well.
yeah, it's very clear. I say all the time, our identities are completely fictional. Where I see this a lot of times, there's a lot of inner child work and future self work that really helps us first disidentify from all the lies we've like taken on. Okay, this is who I am. It's like, no, you get to decide who you are actually, but we need to release some of that childhood programming. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, and there's even research for some, if it might interest some people to know that if your parent said something like, oh, my child is shy, versus like she feels shy today, just that simple shift of language, the child will say, oh, I'm a shy person. Okay. Being shy is bad. Oh, okay. But it's like, no, it's just, your parents aren't robots. They'll say things, right? And so to take a moment and reflect on all of that. And what I feel like you were saying, Rachel, is like the more you silence and you step into your being, it becomes easier for you to disidentify with your identities that don't serve you and to upgrade that subconscious pattern, which I feel like both Rachel and I do with our clients in different ways, shapes, and forms. And that's what allows us to manifest realities that potentially, like, I mean, if 5 years ago you asked me this would be a reality, I'd be like, huh, what? But that's the shift of identity as well, and to enjoy that process but not get too gripped on. That's what I kind of understood from all of that.
100%. And you can, like, I think I used the word, if I remember correctly, like play with it. And it's about, you can play with it. Like we're here, we've got access to like all this stuff. So we may as well
Right.
go and play with it. I think where I've really seen the transition in my life awareness, my experience is that understanding of the difference between, it all goes back to the same whole, but the understanding of the difference between that more, I'm going to go play with this identity, might maybe slightly ego led, but it's fun, compared with actual that essence, the beingness that's within us all the time. And actually nobody can fully explain what that is. I use the word life force, but I think you would struggle to find anybody that can fully explain it as a whole, because it's just it's so
It's
big.
felt.
It's so big
Yeah.
that we can feel it. We all feel it. We all have a feeling of it. But yeah, it's a playground here. So
Totally,
we get
totally.
to play with it. And I liked what you said about the some identities that serve and some that don't. And so listened to, I wish I could tell you who it was, but it was a podcast I listened to. And there was a really interesting point where it's like, you ask somebody who they are. Well, usually you get like, I'm a coach or a lawyer or whatever. And it's like, but you're not, because you're not that all of the time. Or I'm happy, or I'm joyful, or I'm fun or outgoing, but that's
Yeah.
not it either, because you're not that all of the time.
I
So
think I might know who you're saying. It's one of the thought leaders that got me to really change my answer when someone says, who are you? I say, I'm the one that observes it all. Michael A. Singer. He wrote the book, The
yeah,
Untethered Soul.
yeah,
I mean, it's a universal truth. Anyone can kind of say it, but that's
yeah,
what I kind of say now. I'm like, who am I? I'm the one who observes it all. So then that becomes
yeah.
like,
That's
that's when you really
beautiful.
get into that playground.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've loved this conversation, Rachel. We can like literally go on forever.
I know,
For
it's like
everyone,
always.
yeah, for everyone who's listening, I hope you receive massive value. Definitely feel free to reach out to Rachel, reach out to myself. If you want to get this journal, I will link it below. It's definitely going to help you with this journey of awareness. I'm going to go through it myself, even though I wrote it. It's a 90-day process where really getting to like show yourself, who do I desire to be? What are the stories I'm saying in my head? What are my daily habits? What do I desire? Desire is something that has become huge for me in the last couple of years, because I realize all our desires are part of our soul mission, but we're taught to kind of suppress them. So being unapologetic about that. So my little baby here, I'm like, I got one copy because it's hard to get things in Antigua. And Oshun, my goodness, we were saying she's probably the wiser of all of us right
Oh,
now.
she
And
is. She is. She had a lot to say. I put it on mute a few times because she had a lot to say, and she has got a lot to say. I know it. So yeah, I'm very, very excited for this little one.
amazing. So do you have any final words you would like to share before we say goodbye?
I think closing with the touchback on like know, when you're listening to this, know that you are your whole and you are wonderful and beautiful, and everything that you think you need, that you desire, that you want, it is all within you. And we talk about that a lot, but it really is. And I want to celebrate every single person that's listening to this. I want to celebrate you, Atana. I've been completely um connected to the journey you've been on recently with what's going on home grounds. And I'm sending you and all of your people, as the rest of the world, so much love. I've loved this space. I love our conversations, and I'm celebrating as well because the last time we talked, Ocean was still in within my womb and I was pregnant. And it's been a really beautiful journey this last few months. So it's so lovely to be here and celebrating with you.
Hi. And if anyone wants to listen to those conversations, I'm actually going to link the playlist of Rachel and I. And it's kind of beautiful if you see the evolution and growth of our journey in terms of the conversations that we have. And that's something that it's like, keep with the practice. It clicks on different levels. So, and that's something you'll clearly see watching us talk, if you see the first video and then like boom, 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 boom. So, and yeah, thank you, Rachel. I love this. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. If you share this on socials, we will be so happy. Please tag us. I will leave both our socials below. And of course, please do feel free to reach out. Let us know if you have any questions. You can leave it in the comment section, or you can reach us through private DM messaging. We love hearing from you, and we're here to support you on your journey, your growth, your evolution. We're both sending you lots of love. Bye.
Bye.